Thank you for viewing this online training video. This presentation will teach you the basics of what you need to know to begin volunteering at our Citizenship Clinics. At the end of this video, we will ask you to complete a short quiz. Don't worry, you will be able to volunteer regardless of how you do on the quiz. You will also have the opportunity to ask questions at the volunteer orientation before the clinic and throughout the entire day. My name is Molly Gavin. I am the Citizenship Coordinator at CASA. Please feel free to contact me at the email provided and reach out to me with any questions that you might have. Our program, Citizenship Maryland, is funded through the AmeriCorps program. In less than 4 years, we have helped over 3,000 immigrants become U.S. citizens. A huge part of our success is spurred by the large volume of applicants that we're able to serve at our weekend clinics, which we would never be able to accomplish without your support. I hope you find this to be a rewarding experience, and whether you continue to volunteer with us or not, that you continue in your dedication towards our goal of creating a more just society. In today's training, we will cover the following topics. Why do we do citizenship? What benefits does our community receive from this service? How does the citizenship process work, and who is eligible? We will study in detail the N400 application form for citizenship, and we will go over logistics of the clinic's day, when to arrive, where to park, and what to expect. On the day of the clinic, we will have another volunteer orientation. This will be a brief review of the application before you begin, and you'll have opportunity to ask questions throughout the day. So to begin, why do we care about citizenship? Different groups of people in the United States have different rights. A huge part of those rights, which many of us may take for granted, are the rights to live and work in the United States. Citizens of the United States always have the right to live and work in the U.S. permanently. They are also entitled to many other rights and protections, the biggest of which is probably security. United States citizens cannot be deported from the country, no matter what trouble they might find themselves in. Citizens can also travel freely across U.S. borders with no restrictions on how long they can stay outside of the country. Citizens also have the right to family reunification. That means a citizen can file a petition to bring their parents, children, spouses, brothers, and sisters into the country. Citizens receive benefits and protections from the government. They also receive protection at consulates abroad. Citizens also receive military protection for their home country. Citizens may also vote in all federal, state, and local elections. The group of immigrants with the most rights after United States citizens are lawful permanent residents, also known as LPRs or green card holders. These immigrants have the right to live and work permanently in the United States. Their status never expires. However, they are still subject to deportation in the case that they violate certain laws or regulations. They have other rights restricted as well. Lawful permanent residents cannot vote in federal or state elections and most local elections. There are also restrictions on their travel outside of the country. Residents cannot leave the country for more than 6 months at a time without obtaining special permission. Another group of immigrants are temporary residents, or those in an unstable status. Many people come into the country with some sort of temporary status that allows them to live and possibly to work as long as they remain in status in the country. These immigrants are also subject to deportation, and their status may need to constantly be renewed. Finally, there is a large group of undocumented residents in the country. These immigrants have no legal right to live or work in the United States. It makes it very difficult for them to earn a living. They are at risk of deportation at any time. Furthermore, most of these people have no avenue to be able to legalize their status. Citizenship is only available to immigrants who already have their lawful permanent resident status. That being the case, the rest of today's training will apply only to immigrants who are already LPRs. To be eligible for naturalization, at the time of filing the N400 application, the immigrant must meet all of these qualifications. You must be 18 years old or older. Children who are younger than 18 may derive citizenship from their parent, which is a different process. You must be a lawful permanent resident for at least 5 years. There's an exception for those who are married to a U.S. citizen, and they may apply after only 3 years of being a lawful permanent resident. An applicant may also turn in the application 90 days before reaching this requirement, but no earlier than that. You must also be physically present in the United States for at least half of the time of your eligibility. That means you can have no trips longer than 6 months outside of the country, and the cumulative total of days that you've spent outside of the country can be no longer than 2.5 years if you're applying after 5 years as a resident, or 1.5 years if you're applying after 3 years as a resident. The number to keep in mind as you're thinking about this requirement is 912 days. Next, you must speak, read, and write basic English. All applicants must be literate in English and conversational. There's no English test per se, but you must be able to talk with the officer and answer all of his or her questions. The officers will gladly repeat, rephrase, and speak the questions more slowly. The reading and writing tests are simple, a short question or phrase, which must be written legibly, but not perfectly. There are certain exceptions to the English requirement, which we will cover on the next slide. Next, you must have a knowledge of U.S. history and civics. The U.S. history and civics is tested orally from a set of 100 predetermined questions. Applicants will all receive a copy of the 100 questions before their interview so they can study and prepare for this exam. To pass, they must get 6 out of 10 questions correct, in other words, a 60%. If you would like to test yourself or to see what the 100 questions are like, click on the link at the lower right-hand corner of the screen to play with an interactive learning tool developed by Immigration Services and the Smithsonian. The next requirement is good moral character. This is the trickiest requirement. An applicant must demonstrate that she has been a person of good moral character for at least the last 5 years. Some things that might count against an applicant are criminal convictions, a failure to pay taxes, non-payment of child support, along with a variety of other concerns. The laws regarding good moral character are extremely complicated, and it's very important that if there are any potential issues, the applicant must speak with an attorney. Please remember, we as volunteers at the training cannot give legal advice. The final requirement is support for the United States Constitution. At the final stage of the citizenship process, the applicant will swear loyalty to the United States. During the interview, she must show that she is willing and desires to take the oath of allegiance to the United States. As I mentioned before, there are 3 automatic exemptions for the English language requirement that are available for older residents who have lived in the country for many years. The first exemption, the 50-20, is for applicants who are at least 50 years old with 20 years of lawful permanent residency or more. These applicants are completely exempt from the English requirement, and they may attend the interview with an interpreter. They do not have to apply for or request this. It is an automatic exemption that they qualify for on the basis of their age and years as a lawful permanent resident. The second exemption is for applicants who are slightly older, at least 55 years old with only 15 years of residency. They are also exempt from the English requirement. Unfortunately, this trend does not continue, so applicants who are older than 55 cannot receive the exemption with fewer than 15 years of residency. For example, an applicant who is 57 years old does not qualify for the exemption after 13 years of residency, but must still wait to have the full 15 years of residency. The third exemption is for applicants who are 65 years old with at least 20 years of residency, and they receive an additional exemption. As you can see, they are already exempt from the English language requirements because they qualify for both the 50-20 and the 55-15 exemptions. But in addition, they also qualify to take a simplified version of the History and Civics exam. The exam is still 10 questions, but they need to study from a list of only 20 possible questions rather than the full 100. Finally, there's a medical waiver option available for people who do not meet any of these exemptions, but have a medical condition that makes it unreasonably difficult or impossible for them to learn or retain English, history, or civics. This waiver is not guaranteed, and the application form must be filled out by a licensed doctor. We have this form available for any applicants who may want to take a copy of the form to their physician. The first step of the citizenship process is to complete the N400 application. That's what you will be doing at the clinic. Once the application is completed, signed, and placed in an envelope with all of the supporting documents and fees, it is mailed to U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, often called USCIS, and the process is begun. The application for citizenship costs $680. There is a government fee waiver available for applicants who cannot afford the fee and who meet certain criteria. We help applicants to apply for this waiver, but not on the day of the clinic. Applicants who are interested will have to schedule an appointment to come back with us another day. The next step is the biometrics appointment, or fingerprint appointment. This appointment usually comes about 1 to 2 months after submitting the application. At this appointment, the applicant's photo will be taken and their fingerprints will be sent out to the FBI to run a full background check. Next, the applicant is called to appear for an interview. The interview may be 2 to 3 months after the biometrics, but recently we're seeing that it's taking much longer to process these applications in Maryland, and applicants are waiting an additional 4 to 5 months after their biometrics appointment. At the interview, the officer will administer the tests of English, history, and civics, and he or she will review the entire application with the applicant. She will ask for any missing documents or to clarify any questions or concerns. If the applicant is missing any information, she will be asked to submit it after the interview. If the applicant passes all portions of the interview and exam, and the application is approved, the applicant will be scheduled for an oath ceremony. Some people are able to attend the oath ceremony on the same day as their interview. Others may have to wait to have a ceremony scheduled, depending on the specifics of their case. Once the ceremony is complete, the applicant is officially a U.S. citizen and can take advantage of all of the benefits that go along with that. At the clinic, you will be helping people to kick off on that first step of the process, filling out the N400 application. When our members first come in for the clinic, they will register and sign up to be pre-screened by one of our experienced citizenship team members. You will see these members throughout the day in a red, blue, or gray AmeriCorps t-shirt. These team members are available to help you out with anything you need or to answer any questions that you have. At the pre-screening, we will determine whether the person is eligible to apply for citizenship today. Some applicants will be given a yellow sticker, which means that they have some complication that needs legal attention. Others will be given a green sticker, which means that they are ready to begin filling out their N400. When you begin working with an applicant, you will ask to see their folder. You should verify that the folder that they have has a green sticker on it. If it does not, then they may not be ready to begin. Please get one of the AmeriCorps team members' attention so that we can be sure the applicant is ready before you start. Applicants who are given a yellow sticker will be able to talk with an attorney at the clinic. After that consult, they may progress to complete an application, or they may be asked to return another day. Once the application is complete, you will give the folder back to the applicant and direct them to the review station. Every application will be carefully reviewed by a staff expert or attorney before it is approved to be sent. These applications are 21 pages long and may take an hour or longer to complete. You can expect to complete 1 or 2 applications on each day that you volunteer. Preparing the N400. When you are filling out an application for citizenship, you are taking on the role of the preparer. As a preparer, there are certain guidelines that you must follow to avoid giving unauthorized legal advice. First, these are important legal documents. Please use your best handwriting, write carefully, correct mistakes neatly, and only use pens with black ink. Applications written in other colors of ink cannot be submitted. Second, follow the instructions. Your role is to read the applicant the instructions and questions on the form and to write the applicant's answers in. Be sure that you pay careful attention during the training and read each portion of the form carefully to avoid errors. If you have any doubts about any part of the form, look at number 3. Ask. If you have a question, raise your hand. There will always be an AmeriCorps or staff member in the room with you available to help out and answer any questions. Fourth and finally, be very careful not to give the applicant advice. You can answer questions about what a word or a question means, but you cannot answer questions about how the applicant should answer the question. You must only write down the applicant's answers. When you complete the application, you will be signing the form as the form's preparer. That means that you swear under penalty of perjury to the statement shown here. Please read this statement carefully, and if you have any questions, contact me or ask me on the day of the clinic. It is very important that you sign this application even if it is not fully completed. We will review and complete the form before it is mailed, but the day of the clinic is our only chance to get your signature. You will not need to provide any other personal information. It will be indicated on the form that you prepared the application at our office, and the contact information will be for CASA. Now we will begin to go through each page of the N400 form. This application is 21 pages long, but each section has specific instructions about how to complete it. We will go through all of the boxes and sections, and you will have the opportunity to ask any questions that come up before the clinic. The first step when you begin an application is to write the applicant's alien number, or A number, on every page. You will see here on the first page that there is a spot for it near the top right of the form. This number should always be 9 digits. On some older versions of the form, there may be only 8 digits. So if you see a card that only has 8 digits, please add a 0 at the beginning of the number to make the form 9 digits. Here you can see some different examples of what various versions of the green card looked like. On each version, the USCIS or A number is circled in black. The top version is the most recent version of the green card. Here you find the USCIS number in the middle of the card. The card in the middle of the page is the previous version of the card, and you're still likely to see many of this version. Here, the A number is found on the top of the card. The card on the bottom of the screen is one of the very old versions of the card. However, this card did not have an expiration date, so you still may see some cards like this. Here, the A number is found on the front of the card somewhere in the middle. This can be a bit difficult to read. If you have any trouble finding the A number on any card that's presented to you, please raise your hand and a staff member or AmeriCorps member will come over to help you. Once you have written the A number on every page of the application, begin with part number 1. Please choose the option that is best for the applicant. Option number 1 is that the applicant is at least 18 years old and has been a permanent resident of the United States for at least 5 years. The vast majority of applications will be submitted under option 1. Option 2 is for the applicant who is at least 18 years old and has been married to a United States citizen for at least 3 years. You may get an applicant who qualifies on the basis of option number 2, but most of the applicants who do meet this qualification will also meet option number 1. If that's the case, please check only box number 1, as box number 2 requires more evidence to be submitted with the application. The remaining options 3 through 5 are very rare and you are unlikely to encounter them at our clinic. If you are concerned about an applicant's eligibility under this part, please raise your hand and a staff member or AmeriCorps member will come over to help you. Part 2 is information about you. Question number 1 asks for the applicant's full legal name. Please ask the applicant what is their legal name, and then check that name against all of the documents that they have before you. There is no guarantee that any one particular document will contain their legal name. If you are unsure about an applicant's legal name, please raise your hand and we will help you figure it out. Question 2 asks for the applicant's name exactly as it appears on the green card. Please write their name here exactly as you see it. That means write it exactly how it's shown, even if it's misspelled, if there are letters missing, if the first and last names are confused, or with any other mistakes that appear on the card. Question 3 is other names you have used since birth. If you ask an applicant if they've ever used any other names, they will most likely answer no, so it's important that you ask a few more questions to make sure that they understand what this question means. For example, ask if they have ever used any nicknames. Those should be included here. Also ask If they're married, have they used their spouse's last name, or if they had a second last name on their birth certificate that they don't use anymore. At the top of the next page, question 4 asks if the applicant would like to legally change his or her name. Applicants for citizenship may legally change their name with this application without having to pay any additional court fees. The disadvantage to doing this on the form is that their application may take a few months longer to process. However, if someone would like to change their name, this can be a good option for them. Regardless of whether the answer is yes or no, please be sure to answer this question. If the applicant would like to change their name, write the new name in the spaces provided. If the applicant says no, you may leave these spaces blank. Question number 5 is the U.S. Social Security number. Please write all 9 digits of the Social Security number here. 6 is the date of birth. Whenever you are writing a date on this application, please be sure to use all 8 digits. That means January 22nd, 1955 should be written as 01221955. Please do not leave out any zeros when you are writing dates. Question number 7 is the LPR since date. This is the date when the applicant became a lawful permanent resident. Looking back at the green cards, you will find this date marked as the resident since date. This is the date circled in gray on the cards shown here. On the newest card, it is at the very bottom. On the second oldest version of the card, you will find it somewhere in the middle. And on the very oldest version of the card, you will find it on the back. On this version, it is not clearly marked, so please raise your hand if you need any help to find this number. Question number 8 asks for the applicant's country of birth. Regardless of what you may know about the applicant by now, please be sure that you ask this question and don't make any assumptions. Question number 9 asks for the country of citizenship or nationality. Likewise, please ask the question and don't make any assumptions. Some people may have acquired citizenship in another country other than their country of birth before coming to the United States. Question 10 asks whether the applicant needs any accommodations at the time of their interview. You may answer yes to this question in the case of an applicant who is in a wheelchair, is deaf or hard of hearing, is blind, or has some other disability that requires specific accommodations. Question number 11 asks whether the applicant has some disability or impairment that prevents them from being able to demonstrate their knowledge of history and civics. This is the medical waiver that we spoke about earlier. If an applicant would like to answer yes to this question, they will need to submit a Form N-648 that is completed by a doctor. If you have someone interested in this exemption, please raise your hand and we can provide more information to them. Question number 12 determines the applicant's eligibility for the automatic exemptions from the English language test. Option A is the 50-20 option, B is the 55-15 option, and C is the 65-20 option, which includes the simplified version of the civics exam. Please be sure that you answer yes or no to each one of these questions, since an applicant may qualify for none, 1, 2, or 3 of them. On the next page is Part 3, Information to Contact You. Please provide at least one phone number in this section. You may provide as many phone numbers as there are space for and an email address if the applicant regularly checks that email. However, only one phone number is required. Part 4 is Information about your residence. This section of the form asks you to list everywhere that the applicant has lived during the last 5 years in backwards chronological order. That means begin with where the applicant lives now. Write the dates that the applicant has lived in their home at the top. Then write the full address. Please note the separate sections for apartment number and separate boxes for city, county, state, zip code +4, and please write in the country as USA. You must provide a physical address for this section. Immigration wants to know where the applicant has physically resided. No P.O. box can be provided here. Part 1A is the mailing address, if different from the physical address. Here you can provide a P.O. box if the applicant would like to receive their mail somewhere else. On the next page, you will find 3 more spaces for writing in previous addresses. As I said before, please work in backwards chronological order. So, after you've established the applicant's current address and mailing address, Your next question will be where the applicant lived before they moved into their current home. You do need to get dates for these addresses as accurately as possible. Many people will be able to remember the month, day, and year that they moved. Some people may not. Please ask questions to estimate the date as best as you can. However, if they don't remember the exact date, it is okay to just write in the month and the year, or to write in approximately December 2012. You should fill in the information for previous addresses all the way back to today's date of 2010 or earlier. That means go back to the home where the applicant was living on today's date of 2010, but don't mark today's date of 2010. Do mark the actual date that they moved in, even if it was many years before. You should not leave any significant gaps in time on this section. If the applicant was living in a friend's home for a couple of months or was traveling out of the country for a couple of months between residences, please indicate that on the form. There should be no gaps of longer than a couple of weeks on this section. Some people may have had more than 4 addresses in the last 5 years. If that's the case, please raise your hand and we will give you an additional sheet of paper to write more addresses on. Part 5 is information about your parents. These questions may seem somewhat odd to the applicants when you ask them. However, we must ask these questions exactly as they are written and put down the truthful answer. The first question is, were your parents married before your 18th birthday? Regardless of whether their parents ever came to this country, they need to answer this question, yes or no. Question number 2, is your mother a U.S. citizen? Please note that it asks if your mother is a U.S. citizen and not a permanent resident. If your mother is a permanent resident, mark no. If your mother is a U.S. citizen, mark yes and provide the information about her that it asks. If the answer to this question is no, you don't need to complete this information. Question number 3 asks the same information about the father. Is your father a U.S. citizen? If yes, please fill out his information here. If no, you can leave these spaces blank. Part 6 is information for the criminal records check, basically demographic information. Please write in the applicant's gender. Again, it may seem silly, but please don't make assumptions. Ask the applicant whether they're male or female. Ask the applicant their height, their ethnicity, Hispanic or Latino, or not Hispanic or Latino, and their race. The race options that you will see on this form are somewhat limited, and many applicants may not identify with any of these options. If that's the case, it's okay to leave the race blank, but please leave only the race blank. All other questions should be answered. Next, provide the applicant's hair color. Again, it's important not to make any assumptions. Ask the applicant what color their hair is. This should also be the natural color. In the case that someone has dyed hair, they should put in the color of their natural hair. On the next page, there's one final question, eye color. Again, please don't make assumptions. Ask the applicant what color his or her eyes are. Part 7 is information about your employment and schools. Just like with information about your residence, you should begin with the most current employment or school and work your way backwards. Here also, it is important to account for all periods of time within the last 5 years. If there is or ever was a time when the applicant wasn't working, please write that in with the dates of unemployment. You can write it in as unemployed. Please put the city, state, and country where they were living when they were unemployed, the dates, and the occupation may say unemployed, or if they prefer, homemaker or housewife. If the applicant has had more than one job during the last 5 years, then you should use the following spaces to include all of that information in backwards chronological order. If the applicant has no other jobs or school, you may write not applicable and continue to the next section. On the top of the next page, you will see one more space to write in previous employment or schools. This form provides only 3 spaces, and some people may have had many more jobs than that. If you need extra space, please attach an additional page. We have these already prepared. Raise your hand and we will bring one to you. Part 8 is time outside of the United States. This section is very important because, as you learned, one of the eligibility requirements is that the person has been physically present in the United States for at least 912 days during the last 5 years. When you're completing this section of the form, always start with question number 3 and fill out the chart with all of the information about their trips outside of the country. For each trip the applicant has taken, you should write the date that they left the United States, the date that they returned to the United States, check whether the trip lasted for 6 months or longer and mark the box yes or no, list the countries to which they traveled. Often this will be just one country, but if they've traveled to more than one, you can list all of them here. And finally, calculate the total number of days outside of the United States. At this point, it is very helpful to ask the applicant if you can see their passports. You can use the stamps in the passport to find the exact dates that the person entered and left the country. Most countries will mark an entry and an exit stamp. The United States marks only entry stamps. If you're having a hard time determining which stamps belong to which trips, I find it helpful to mark first all of the entry stamps into the United States in chronological order, and then find entry stamps into the other countries that match. Once you have determined all of the trips in the last 5 years, you may go back to questions number 1 and 2. Question number 1 asks for the total number of days spent outside of the United States. Total up all the numbers in the rightmost column of the chart below and write that number here. This is the number that should not exceed 912 days. Question number 2 asks for the total number of trips the applicant has taken outside of the United States. Count the number of trips listed in the chart below and write that number here. If you need more space for the chart, we have additional pieces of paper that you can use to list the rest of the trips. Part 9 is information about the applicant's marital history. Question number 1, what is your current marital status? Please ask the applicant if they are married, divorced, separated, widowed, or single and never married. If the applicant is currently married or separated but not legally divorced, then go on to fill out the rest of this page. If the applicant has never been married, please answer question number 3 and then go on to the next page. You can skip question number 2 for anyone who is not currently married. Question number 3 is how many times have you been married? If the applicant has never been married, write 0 in this box and go on to the next page. If the applicant has been married, please ask them how many times and write that number here. For anyone who is currently married, please also answer question number 2. If you are married, is your spouse a current member of the U.S. Armed Forces? Yes or no? Then go on to number 4. If you are married now, provide the following information about your current spouse. A. Legal name of current spouse. Just like when you determined the legal name of the applicant on page 1, please ask questions and look at any documents they have with them to determine what is the current legal name. Part B is a previous name of the current spouse. Again, when you ask somebody if they had any other names that they used previously, they're likely to say no. Ask a few more questions to be sure that you get to the answer. Particularly if the applicant is a male, ask whether his wife has a maiden name that she used before. Question number 3 gives you another space to write in any other names, such as nicknames, that the applicant may have used. Sometimes you will find that though an applicant has not been divorced, they have lost contact with their current spouse and may not have any way of getting the information that this form asks for. If that's the case, please fill in as much of this information as possible. For example, the applicant should really be able to remember their spouse's name, even if they haven't spoken in 10 years. In Part D, please write in the current spouse's date of birth. In Part E, put the date of marriage with the current spouse. Part F is the current spouse's present home address. If the applicant lives together with the spouse, you can just write in spouse residing with me and leave the rest of the spaces blank. If they do not live together, please write in the complete address, even if it's outside of the United States. Finally, please don't miss the last 2 questions at the bottom of this page, as they're easy to skip over. G is the current spouse's present employer. Here, you only need to put the name of the employer or the company. No need to put more information than that. And question number 5 is your current spouse a U.S. citizen? Mark yes or no. The next page is more information about your current spouse. If your applicant has never been married or is not married currently, you can skip this page and go on to the next one. If your applicant is currently married or separated but not legally divorced, please continue to fill out this information. Question number 6 is only applicable if your current spouse is a U.S. citizen. Otherwise, leave question 6 blank and go on to question 7. Question 7, you fill out if your current spouse is not a U.S. citizen. Please write in A, the current spouse's country of citizenship or nationality, B, the current spouse's A number, if they have one, and C, the current spouse's immigration status. Here there are only 2 options for immigration status, lawful permanent resident or other. If you check the other box, you are asked to explain. Examples of what might go in this box are TPS, temporary protected status, or asylum application pending, or resides in another country. If the applicant's spouse is not documented in this country, please do not write illegal or undocumented. We prefer the term non-LPR. If the applicant has any concerns about putting their spouse's immigration status on this form, please raise your hand so that we can make sure the applicant gets the chance to talk with someone who can give them advice about what the possible consequences of this would be. Question number 8 asks, how many times has your current spouse been married, including annulled marriages and marriages to the same person? Please ask the applicant if their spouse has ever been married before. If this is their only marriage, write 1 in the box. If they've been married before, write 2 or more. If the applicant's spouse has been married previously, please provide the information about the spouse's ex-spouse here. Some people may be reluctant to give this information, but it does need to be included. If the applicant's spouse has been married more than once previously, we have additional sheets of paper that you can use to provide the information about the previous ex-spouses. On the next page, question 9 is information about your previous spouse. This is where you write in the information about the applicant's previous marriages. If the applicant has never been married before, you may write not applicable and move on. If the applicant is currently divorced or is currently married but has been married before, then you will put their ex-spouse's information here. Part 10 asks for information about the applicant's children. In question number 1, please indicate the total number of children that the applicant has. This should include children who are deceased, children who are adopted, stepchildren, adult children, children in other countries, etc. Anyone whom the applicant can claim as a child should be listed on here. Beginning with part number 2, you will write in the information for each child. Please write the full name, including the full middle name. Write the child's A number, if applicable, the child's date of birth, and the child's country of birth. If the child has no A number, you can write in NA. If the child used to have an A number but has since become a U.S. citizen, you can write U.S. citizen into the boxes. Please note that any child who was born in the United States is a United States citizen and will not have an A number. At the top of the next page, you will find space to write in the child's current address. If the child lives with the applicant, you can write child resides with me. If they do not live together, please write in the child's complete address, even if it's outside of the United States. Finally, don't miss question A.6, what is your child's relationship to you? Here, most often you will write in biological child, but it may be the case that you write in stepchild, adopted child, or some other relationship. In part B, you can list the information for the second child. The next page has space for 2 more children as well. And if you need more space than that, we have extra forms available. Just raise your hand and we will bring them over to you. Part 11, Additional Information. Here in the form begins a long series of questions that ask about the applicant's good moral character. Your most important job at this point is to ask all of these questions and make sure the applicant understands them. Please do not give any advice about how the applicant should answer these questions. All of the answers must be truthful. On a simple application, the answer to all of these questions will be no. A yes answer, however, does not automatically disqualify someone from applying for citizenship. Any yes answers need to be explained fully and will usually require the assistance of an attorney to determine whether or not there are any potential issues that could come up from the answer. The one exception to this is question number 9. Have you ever been a member of or in any way associated with any organization, fund, foundation, party, club, society, etc. in the United States or in any other place in the world? CASA is a membership-based organization, and all of the applicants that we serve at our clinic will be members of CASA. So we have already marked the answer to this question yes and put in the information for CASA on the form. Please explain to the applicant that we have done this so that they know that this information is on the form and are prepared to give that truthful answer when they go for their interview. I'm not going to read all of these questions to you right now. Maybe you can see them on the screen. If not, you will have a chance to look at them while you're doing the application and during the volunteer orientation before the clinic. The questions on this page are about whether the applicant has claimed to be a U.S. citizen, whether they have voted illegally in the United States, whether they have a title of nobility in any foreign country, and whether they have always paid their taxes correctly. At the bottom of the page, there are questions about whether they have been a member of the Communist Party, a totalitarian party, or any terrorist organization. As I mentioned before, please ask all of these questions exactly as they are and write down the applicant's response. We do have a copy of this application in Spanish, so if you're working with an applicant whose native language is Spanish, feel free to refer to that to make sure that the applicant understands all of these questions carefully. The questions on the next page have to do with violence, rebellion, persecution, Nazi involvement, genocide, torture, and military participation. For the most part, you will find that the answers to these questions are all no. However, it is fairly common that we do work with applicants who were involved with the military of their previous country. Please see question number 15. Were you ever a member of, or did you ever serve in, help, or otherwise participate in any of the following groups? Option number A is a military unit. If the applicant was involved with the military in their home country, please mark their answer yes to this question and put a sticky note or a flag here. We will not ask you to do any work to explain their military service. This is something that we will complete after the clinic during a private appointment with the applicant. On the next page, question 16 asks about whether the applicant has ever worked, volunteered, or served in a prison, jail, or labor camp. Question number 17 asks, were you ever a part of any group, or did you ever help any group, unit, or organization that used a weapon against another person or threatened to do so? For people who've served in the military in another country, they may answer yes to this question. If the applicant answers yes, then go on to answer questions 17A and 17B. If the applicant answers no to question number 17, then you can skip questions A and B and go on to question number 18. Likewise, this question asks, did you ever sell, give, or provide weapons to any person, or help another person sell, give, or provide weapons to any persons? If the answer is no, then you may go on to question number 19, and you do not need to answer questions 18A and 18B. Question number 19, did you ever receive any type of military, paramilitary, or weapons training? For applicants who have served in the military or who have worked on a police unit, the answer to this question will probably be yes. Questions number 20 and 21 have to do with enlisting children for military service. And the next section Questions 22 through 28 have to do with the applicant's criminal history. If the applicant has any criminal record in the United States, this section will be carefully completed with the supervision of an attorney. If you get to this section and the applicant answers yes to any of these questions, please leave them blank and go on to the next section. We will meet with this applicant at a private follow-up appointment to complete this section. If the answer to all of these questions is no, you may mark the answers and continue on with the form. This section continues on to the top of the next page. As before, if there are any yes answers, please leave this blank and go on to the next section. Question 30 asks a series of questions about the applicant's involvement with alcohol, prostitution, illegal drugs, illegal gambling, and other illegal activities. Please ask each question and mark the applicant's answer. The questions on the next page ask about giving false information to the U.S. government. They ask about previous deportations from the United States, and finally they ask about service in the U.S. Armed Forces. As with all of these questions, please ask the question and record the answer truthfully. If there are any yes answers, flag them and we will make sure that we address those questions individually with the applicants. Now, please take a look at question number 46. This question is about registration for the Selective Service. The Selective Service is a registry of all of the males who live in this country from the time when they turn 18 to the time that they turn 26. The question asks, are you a male who lived in the United States at any time between your 18th and 26th birthday? The important thing to note here is that the applicant does not need to have been a lawful permanent resident at that time. Any immigrant in the country between their 18th and 26th birthdays is required to register for the Selective Service, even if they were undocumented. So if you're working with a male applicant, please ask them at what age they first came to the United States. If they were younger than 26, then the answer to this question should be yes, and we'll provide their Selective Service information. In the case of an applicant who was required to register for the Selective Service but did not, there are specific instructions that we must follow. If the applicant is still under 26 years of age, then they must go and register with the Selective Service immediately. When they have done so, they'll come back and we can complete their application. If the applicant is now older than 26, they're no longer eligible to register. In this case, they must write a statement explaining why they did not register. In most cases, the applicants that we work with did not know that they were required to do so. So we have a standard form written up to explain this. If that's not the case, then the applicant will write an explanation specific to their case. If you need a copy of this form, please raise your hand and we will bring it to you. Finally, questions 47 through 52 have to do with the United States Oath of Allegiance requirements. Please ask the applicant each one of these questions and make sure that they understand what the questions mean. Question number 47, do you support the Constitution and form of government of the United States? The applicant, of course, should answer yes to this question if they understand what it means, because when they go for the Oath of Allegiance, they will be swearing loyalty to the United States and swearing to protect the Constitution. Question 48, do you understand the full Oath of Allegiance to the United States? Are you willing to take the full Oath of Allegiance to the United States? If the law requires it, are you willing to bear arms on behalf of the United States? If the law requires it, are you willing to perform non-combatant services in the U.S. Armed Forces? And finally, if the law requires it, are you willing to perform work of national importance under civilian direction? Everyone must answer yes to these questions to be eligible for citizenship. The only exception is to the questions about bearing arms on behalf of the country. For those people who are very religious and their religion prohibits any actions of violence, they may be able to answer no to these questions and write an explanation. If you have anyone who feels uncomfortable answering yes to these questions, please raise your hand and we'll come to talk with them. The very last question, question 53, is only applicable for applicants who answered yes to the question about having a title of nobility in a foreign country. Please leave this question blank. Part 12 asks for the applicant's signature. Do not ask the applicant to sign at this point. Once you get to this point of the form, we will ask for your signature on the next page, but we will not ask the applicant to sign until after their application has been reviewed and approved to be sent. Part 13 asks for the signature and contact information of the person who prepared this form, if other than the applicant. That's your information. You will see on the forms that we give you that CASA de Maryland's organization information is already typed into this form. All we need is for you to write your name on the top line, put your signature and today's date in the box next to it. As I mentioned before, we do need you to sign the form today, regardless of whether or not it has been completed, because this is the only day that we have you here to give the signature. This application will not be sent until it has been carefully reviewed and we are sure that everything is correct. Part 14 is the statement of applicants who used an interpreter. If you're filling out this form for an applicant who qualifies for an English language exemption and you spoke to the applicant in a language other than English, please complete this form. Please complete this portion of the form. If your applicant does not qualify for any English language exemptions, then leave this section blank. If your applicant does qualify for the English language exemptions, but you don't speak the same language as the applicant, please have the person who was there interpreting with you sign this section of the form. This section of the form continues on to the next page. The applicant will sign on the previous page and the interpreter will sign on this page. Once you reach Part 15, stop. The rest of the form will be completed by USCIS at the time of the interview and oath ceremony. Congratulations! Once you reach this point, you are done and you've completed your first N400. There are two primary locations where we hold citizenship clinics at CASA. The first is at our office in Hyattsville, which is our main location, also known as the Multicultural Center or the Mansion, and the second is at our Workers Center in Baltimore. You will receive details about the date and the time of the clinic directly via email when you register. The Hyattsville clinics are usually held on Saturdays at 9 a.m., and Baltimore clinics are usually Sundays at noon. Occasionally, you may volunteer at a citizenship clinic at a different location when we work with a partner organization to provide services in a different geographic area. When you arrive at the MCC, parking is available all around the building. The building is found in the middle of an apartment complex, and parking in front of all of the complexes is available throughout the day. As long as the spot that you find is not individually marked as reserved or handicapped, you may park anywhere. Parking at our Baltimore office is much more restricted. We do have a small lot to the left of the building that is reserved specifically for CASA. If that lot is full, please follow the posted signs for street parking around the building. Please do not park directly in front of the building, as those spots are reserved for the organization next door. When you arrive at the MCC, please go to the front door and pull hard to open. It's very heavy. People often think it's locked, but you just need to pull. If you have any trouble finding the building or entering the building, please call me at the cell phone number that you'll be provided when you register. When you arrive at the Baltimore office, there is a call button to the left of the front door that you must push for the door to be unlocked. When the door unlocks, you will hear a click. Again, if you have any trouble getting into the building, please call me at the cell phone number provided. Thank you again for taking the time to view this presentation and for volunteering at our citizenship clinics. Your support is so important to our program. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. My email address is listed here. You can email me, call me, or speak to me or one of the other staff members on the day of the clinic. We look forward to seeing you. Thank you, and good luck on your quiz.